Well, businessman Fred Hebe claims he's being defamed by members of the local U.S. Attorney's Office. Hebe has filed a petition to depose two high-profile prosecutors over posts on the Times-Picayune's website. Sabrina Wilson is here now with more on this developing story. This is an unusual twist to most stories you see emerging out of federal court.
To say the least, Liz. Hebe hasn't filed suit yet, but he does want to depose prosecutors Sal Perricone and James Mann. Hebe is trying to figure out if they're posting comments about him under the name Henry L. Mencken. The petition says the Mencken posts reveal a level of knowledge about the inner workings of the U.S. Attorney's Office that is well beyond what could be expected of even the most diligent outside observer.
They've got an expert who cited certain phraseology, and I think they use the term archaic words that people don't usually use, even in writing legal stuff on a regular basis, and they found those words in both a prior filing by these U.S. attorneys and in some of these postings. So they're trying to say that those two things would lead you to believe that this alleged person, Mencken 1951, is in fact one of the two U.S. attorneys.
Now, Hebe says whoever is behind the negative and defamatory posts is implying that he bankrolled Aaron Broussard to muzzle him when it comes to making statements to the feds about Hebe. We did ask the U.S. Attorney's Office for a comment, but so far we haven't heard back, Liz.
At 4 p.m. An executive with the River Birch landfill in Jefferson Parish says federal prosecutors violated his constitutional rights.
Dominic Fazio is charged with fraud in connection with Garner Services, a construction company. But Fazio says the FBI agents and prosecutors tampered with his legal representation and tried to force him to comment on the separate River Birch federal probe. Sabrina Wilson has more from federal court.
And Nancy, the hearing continues at this hour. Fazio wants his indictment thrown out on the grounds of prosecutorial misconduct. Now, these allegations involve the same federal prosecutors, Sal Perricone and James Mann, who were named in a separate court petition this week involving comments on NOLA.com.
Create the appearance that these were unrelated investigations when that's just not the case.
Now, Titus is on the witness stand at this hour. I spoke to U.S. Attorney Jim Letton in the hallway not long ago. He said he couldn't comment on Fazio's motion or the allegations about his prosecutors and NOLA.com. Back to you.
Well, the NOLA.com commenter at the heart of River Birch owner Fred Hebe's effort to depose a couple of federal prosecutors weighed in on the story today. The online commenter, who uses the handle Henry L. Mencken 1951, posted this morning saying, "I'm here just watching our rights erode."
Henry L. Mencken 1951 posted about 600 comments on NOLA.com. A civil filing by Fred Hebe claims the commenter is Assistant U.S. Attorney Sal Perricone, who's handling the federal investigation of Hebe and River Birch. Many of the comments by Henry L. Mencken involve people who spend much of their time in the federal courthouse. Mencken posted opinions on defense attorneys. Following an article on Mark St. Pierre's sentence, Mencken comments on his attorney, Eddie Castang, writing, "Castang is a fool for going to trial in this case. I wonder who's more arrogant." When former New Orleans representative and Councilwoman Renee Gill-Pratt received her 7-year sentence, Mencken again commented on a defense attorney, this time Gill-Pratt's lawyer Mike Fowler. He wrote, "The client goes to jail and Fowler gets richer. Haven't we seen this before? What a system." Mencken also wrote opinions on judges. On federal judge Ivan Lamel, this post, "It is the luck of the draw. Lamel had help from the Jeffersons to get his judgeship. Enough said. What Ivan the Terrible has done is to ensure he has more trials by inviting the guilty to test the government's case." And of Louisiana Supreme Court Judge Kitty Kimball, the Chief Justice of the state Supreme Court, she gave Jim Brown his bar license back. He had 5 convictions. And of Orleans Civil District Court, he wrote, "Ever been to Civil District Court? Les Miles is smarter, and that's a leap of faith." He also comments directly about a former co-worker and boss. Mike Magner recently left the U.S. Attorney's Office, but while he was there, Henry L. Mencken wrote this, "Mike Magner, You've got to be kidding. Every case this flop handles, he has to have his hand held. And of U.S. Attorney Jim Letton this post. Letton is great for taking credit for other people's hard work. It is the assistants and agents who do the work and should be congratulated. Yes, I know he's their leader, but when do you ever hear him say who they are and congratulate them publicly? It's getting old.
At 9 p.m.
Good evening, I'm John Snell.
And I'm Lee Zurich. Federal prosecutor Sal Perricone admits he's responsible for posting comments on NOLA.com about federal cases under the name Henry L. Mencken 1951.
The Justice Department is now involved to determine a possible punishment for Perricone. And as Natasha Robin reports, he's also recused from a number of ongoing federal cases.
Letton confirmed Henry L. Mencken 1951 is Sal Perricone.
He has in fact been the sole user of the NOLA.com identifier Henry L. Mencken 1951.
Letton went on to say that no one else in his office participated in the post. Perricone posted about 600 comments to NOLA.com, trashing federal judges, politicians, and even possible probe targets.
The U.S. Department of Justice in Washington was notified. I did that personally. In fact, I called and I contacted very, very high levels of DOJ almost immediately upon learning this.
You wouldn't expect a federal prosecutor to tell people to bring a gun to the mayor's house.
But it appears that may have happened if, in fact, Assistant U.S. Attorney Sal Perricone has been posting comments under more than one name. Perricone has admitted to being H.L. Mencken 1951, but evidence suggests he's also been operating as Camp Street Blue in Legacy, USA. The commenter Camp Street Blue has strong feelings about the president and vice president. In one post, he wrote, "Biden is a liar, an inveterate liar, and he is a good fit for his boss." This comment came soon after President Obama reappointed Jim Letton as U.S. Attorney. He wrote about the president more directly in a 2009 comment. "Never will this left-wing socialist, anti-American regime ever accept responsibility for anything. Our country is under attack now from the socialists running our government." He takes aim at another Democrat, Senator Mary Landrieu. She is the most meretricious politician Louisiana has ever had. She will say one thing, building in an escape hatch in the event the political tides ebb against her or her family's interest. He says former special agent in charge of the FBI, Jim Bernazzani, wouldn't make a good bartender at Cooter Brown's. What an expletive. When will the truth come out about this empty suit? And to the Metropolitan Crime Commission, this post, the MCC knew all about this. They always pile on when there's a headline. Typical. I guess donations are low. Remember, Sal Perricone has been the point person for the federal consent decree with the NOPD. Commenter Legacy USA wrote this about the police chief. "I feel that if Surpass faithfully adheres to the Justice Department's consent decree and follows it to the letter, he will be a success. And P.S., can you lose some weight? We have enough fat cops in New Orleans." And of the NOPD, Legacy USA wrote this last April. "The problem that infects the NOPD started when previous mayors demanded that the hiring standards for recruit officers were lowered to attract a certain demographic into the ranks of the NOPD. Study the officers who have been convicted of crimes, either in state or federal court, and you will see a pattern emerge." Camp Street Blue takes a few shots at defense attorneys. Of Vinny Mosca, he wrote, "Typical Mosca, all mouth, no brain." On Pat Fanning, "No one in their right mind would pay attention to anything Pat Fanning had to say. This guy is an idiot." He gets on Mose Jefferson and Renee Gill-Pratt's attorneys too, writing about Buddy Lemon and Mike Fowler. The only wacko in court Friday was Lemon. Oh, I forgot, Fowler too. These are two attorneys who have put more of their clients in prison because of the rabid egos than any other attorneys in New Orleans. And the commenter Legacy USA says of defense attorney Chick Foray, "Foray is an absolute idiot." While Foray was making an absolute butthole out of his client, cameras clicked away. Camp Street Blue has strong feelings about New Orleans, writing there is no hope for this city, given its politics, culture, geography, and layers upon layers of stupidity. In late 2008, he wrote this about the Saints. "The Saints need another home. Let's face it, we have always been a second-rate city, hell-bent on making a nickel into a dime. The NFL knows this, and we should too. Let's wish the Saints a fair bon voyage. Perhaps they will win in another city and we can live vicariously. By the way, the next year the Saints won the Super Bowl while they were still playing in New Orleans. Camp Street Blue has distaste for Ray Nagin and Mark Morial. He wrote, "I am beginning to believe that the Nagin administration has exceeded the Mark Morial administration in denying the citizens of New Orleans of their right to honest government for profit." In later writes of Nagin, "This man is an abject fraud. I thought Mark Morial was bad, and he was, but Nagin is worst." But if in fact Camp Street Blue is federal prosecutor Sal Perricone, this comment raises serious questions. In June of 2009, Camp Street Blue writes, "For all of you who have a penchant for firearms and how they work, Ray Nagin lives on Park Island." We talked to U.S. Attorney Jim Letton today. He gave us this statement: "As United States Attorney, I and the U.S. Department of Justice take this conduct very, very seriously. It is our intention to bring this matter to a swift and just resolution."
5 p.m.
Good evening, I'm Nancy Parker.
And I'm Lee Zurich. A senior litigator in the U.S. Attorney's Office who prosecuted high-profile cases resigned today while under investigation.
Assistant U.S. Attorney Sal Perricone is out of a job. He resigned amid the scandal involving his scathing online posts. Sabrina Wilson begins our coverage.
Assistant U.S. Attorney Sal Perricone is no longer Jim Letton's employee.
It was effective immediately.
A scandal that has some questioning Letton's future.
I cannot tell you who I've talked to. I've talked to a lot of people.
Well, U.S. Attorney Jim Letton vowed to stay the course today as he went before hundreds of the area's top law enforcement officers. Letton says his office has been through bigger problems than this, and he predicts there will be little impact on dozens of ongoing cases. Rob Masson continues our team coverage.
It was a defiant Jim Letton who went before hundreds of criminal justice leaders at a Crime Stoppers luncheon.
Know this: in addition to those being unauthorized, none of those comments, criticisms, or characterizations were in any way reflective of my views or opinions or those of the United States Department of Justice.
Letton has assigned a couple of assistant U.S. attorneys to continue the River Birch litigation to which Perricone had been assigned. The U.S. attorney insists that no case will be adversely affected by the resignation, including the consent decree for the NOPD, which Perricone had been working on as well.
Former Mayor Ray Nagin calls one of Perricone's alleged posts shocking. As we mentioned last night, there's speculation Perricone made posts using more than one handle, including Camp Street Blue. In June of 2009, Camp Street Blue posted this: "For all of you who have a penchant for firearms and how they work, Ray Nagin lives on Park Island." Former Mayor Nagin has tweeted about the post, saying, "News tonight showed top prosecutor in U.S. Attorney's Office blogged my home address and for someone with guns to assassinate me. Shocking." Of course, Fox 8 News did not report Perricone made that post about Nagin. We reported evidence suggests Perricone made it. No one from the U.S. Attorney's Office has denied Perricone is the person behind the handle Camp Street Blue.
We begin with breaking news this afternoon. The attorney for one of the men convicted in the Danziger Bridge shooting wants his client's sentencing delayed as a result of controversial comments posted by former federal prosecutor Sal Perricone. Arthur Kaufman was convicted for conspiracy, lying to police, and falsifying evidence in the Danziger case, and he faces up to 120 years in prison. According to the motion, Kaufman's attorney, Bill Gibbons, wants time to evaluate the improper comments posted by the former federal prosecutor.
There's an important development out of federal court this evening where the U.S. attorney has announced that Jim Letton, that he and his office are recusing themselves from anything involving the River Birch investigation. This is obviously a direct result of the former Assistant U.S. Attorney Sal Perricone posting on NOLA.com in the forum section comments about River Birch, the investigation, and Fred Hebe, and as a consequence of that, Hebe sued Perricone in a libel case. Former Jefferson Parish President Aaron Broussard wants the U.S. Attorney's Office recused from his corruption case.
The former U.S. attorney who watched his career implode over comments posted on NOLA.com speaks out in an interview with New Orleans Magazine. Sal Perricone resigned back in March when it was revealed that he was a prolific anonymous poster under the screen name of Henry L. Mencken 1951. Now he tells New Orleans Magazine he owes taxpayers an explanation and an apology. He says U.S. Attorney Jim Letton didn't know about his online postings until he told him March 13th. He describes the interchange Jim said, "Is this you?" Perricone recalled, "I told him, yes, it's me." His face dropped and he blanched. Two separate lawsuits are filed in the wake of some online postings that grabbed so much attention a few months ago. Former Jefferson Parish President Aaron Broussard and River Birch landfill owner Fred Hebe both filed suits in civil district court claiming they were defamed. Natasha Robin has the story.
Two separate defamation lawsuits are filed just days apart.
We begin this hour with breaking news from civil court.
Now, a new lawsuit targets Jim Letton's first assistant U.S. attorney, Rob Masson, here now with the latest on this huge development.
Yeah, guys, a very heated issue. No response yet from the U.S. Attorney's Office. They say they just got the 12-page defamation lawsuit filed just before 10 this morning. Now, the suit alleges that First Assistant U.S. Attorney Jan Maselli Mann, under the online name Iwi Man, made numerous online comments about matters regarding the U.S. Attorney's Office. Another bombshell, again, the U.S. Attorney's Office here locally has recused itself from River Birch litigation, but certainly these are allegations being made against one of Jim Letton's top lieutenants for many, many years, and it remains to be seen what, if any, action the U.S. Attorney or Ms. Mann will take regarding this lawsuit.
Okay.
Jan Mann has been first assistant to the U.S. Attorney for almost all of Jim Letton's 11.5 years in office.
We know it happened with Perricone. If this was also occurring with his first assistant, I think that the question is raised seriously whether he's been there too long.
We begin with breaking news from the U.S. Attorney's Office.
U.S. Attorney Jim Letton breaks his silence on the actions of his now former first assistant U.S. Attorney, Jan Mann. Mann was accused of making inappropriate posts on NOLA.com about federal cases, and today Letton confirms Mann did in fact post those comments on NOLA.com, and Meg Gatto is here now with this developing story. Meg.
Well, that's right, Liz and Jerry. These allegations first came to light last Friday, and Letton has remained tight-lipped about the situation until this morning when he released a statement which read in part, quote, Assistant U.S. Attorney Mann used NOLA.com to post comments. As of Monday night, November 5th, 2012, AUSA Jan Maselli Mann is no longer serving in the supervisory positions of First Assistant United States Attorney or Chief of the Criminal Division.
U.S. District Judge Kurt Engelhardt orders the Department of Justice to conduct its own investigation into a blogging scandal after unsealed court documents reveal allegations of misconduct by members of the U.S. Attorney's Office.
U.S. Attorney Jim Letton acknowledges for the first time that former First Assistant Jan Mann did use the handle Iwi Man to make inappropriate online posts.
Documents now show that Mann began making the post several months before another high-ranking prosecutor resigned for online activity. Natasha Robin has the story.
Unsealed court documents show U.S. Attorney Jim Letton now admitting that his former first assistant, Jan Mann, was posting online under the alias Iwi Man.
This is a Fox 8 News special report.
Good morning, I'm Liz Reyes. We interrupt you to bring you this breaking news regarding U.S. Attorney Jim Letton. Our Fox 8 News sources confirm the U.S. Attorney will announce within an hour that he is stepping down as the U.S. Attorney for this district. Good morning, I'm Liz Reyes.
And I'm Shelley Brown. We are breaking into coverage for an announcement from U.S. Attorney Jim Letton.
Sources tell Fox 8 Letton will resign today. He's come under scrutiny after a web posting scandal broke that involved two of his federal prosecutors, including his second-in-command.
Hello, Liz and Shelley. We're live here in the U.S. Attorney's Office, and I'll kind of move to the side again as we're awaiting a news conference where Jim Letton is expected to announce he is resigning from office. And you can see some people have obviously started to gather here. If we can pan over to the right here, Lance, and you can see Fred Harper, who's been the first assistant in this office since Jan Mann was pulled out of that role. Fred Harper on the left there. There is U.S. Attorney Jim Letton starting this news conference today.
Good morning, members of the press corps. Good morning to the citizens we serve. At this point, I think I have to turn it over to them. Again, thank you so much for this incredible opportunity, and God bless you, and God bless the men and women that we serve out there every day. Thank you.
Stunning development at the U.S. Attorney's Office here. Jim Letton just making it official that he is resigning, stepping down from office after 11.5 years with that office.
But total, I think he mentioned 28 years with the U.S. Department of Justice. That's a long time. And this is a guy who is from this area. He is a New Orleans native, graduated from De La Salle High School, went on to graduate from Tulane Law School, and then to serve all of these years in public service.
You know, the pieces of Jim Letton's downfall really began coming together early in 2012.
And Sabrina Wilson is here now with a look at a timeline. Sabrina?
Yeah, it was some startling revelations about his office. So what led to the unraveling of Jim Letton's career? It began in March when Letton's veteran assistant U.S. Attorney Sal Perricone was outed as online poster.
But once again, if you're just joining us now, 10:50, U.S. Attorney Jim Letton announcing that he is resigning as the U.S. Attorney after 11.5 years in that office, and it is effective next week, Tuesday.
And of course, we'll have much more on Fox 8 News at noon and in later broadcasts throughout the day here on Fox 8. And stay tuned to fox8live.com for any other developments.
We thank you so much for joining. We'll return you now to regular programming. See you back here at noon.
I believe, therefore, and I think my colleagues in the department agree, that it is therefore time for me to move on, to move forward, so that this U.S. Department of Justice, this tremendous, storied, wonderful U.S. Attorney's Office, and our federal, state, and local enforcement partners, and our non-governmental enforcement partners as well, can move forward together.
Today at noon on Fox 8, U.S. Attorney Jim Letton resigns amid the swirl of a huge distraction created by online postings by two of his top federal assistants. We have Fox 8 Live team coverage of this breaking news.
From Louisiana's home team, this is Fox 8 News at noon.
Good afternoon. I'm Liz Reyes.
And I'm Jerry Valancourt. We begin with breaking news from the U.S. Attorney's Office, where just an hour and a half ago,
Jim Letton announced his resignation effective next Tuesday. We begin our live team coverage with Lee Zurich at the U.S. Attorney's Office. Lee.
Hey, Liz and Jerry, and Jim Letton actually just left this office building about 2 minutes ago, got into a car with a number of other Department of Justice officials. Letton saying that everything's going to be fine and he will move on. But obviously this is a difficult time for him. Jim Letton been U.S. Attorney since April of 2001, and almost 12 years later will end his run.
Well, joining us now is former U.S. Attorney Harry Rosenberg.
he joins us now with some perspective on what to expect next. Thanks so much for joining us today.
My pleasure. Good afternoon. I'm Nancy Parker.
And I'm John Snell. Over the next 2 hours, we'll bring you team coverage of the impact of Letton's resignation, including how this could affect federal cases. We begin with Lee Zurich.
Yeah, Jim Letton having a news conference this morning at 10:30. Jim Letton cracked a joke or two before his news conference began, but the room definitely had a different feeling to it today. Dozens of co-workers flanked Letton. Usually we see the U.S. Attorney when he's taking down another public official. Today he announced his run as the area's top crime fighter would come to an end. Some in Jim Letton's office had to fight back tears as the country's longest-serving United States attorney announced his resignation.
Well, U.S. Attorney Eric Holder issued a statement after today's announcement, writing that as the longest-serving U.S. attorney in the country, Jim Letton has demonstrated an unwavering commitment to the people of his district and the nation by working tirelessly to make their communities safer through reducing violent crime, fighting public corruption, and protecting civil rights.
For now, Holder has appointed an interim replacement. Dana Bente will fill the role temporarily. As for possible replacements, here's a look at some names that might come up.
Former State Senate President Joel Chasson, local attorney Kenneth Polite, and defense attorney Ralph Capitelli. Also being mentioned, attorney Pauline Hardin, and judges Kiva Landrum Johnson and Lori White, among others.
Local officials and citizens are also reacting to Letton's departure.
Yeah, that's news to me. I can't believe that he did resign.
He's been there for a long time. He's been very effective in rooting out political corruption and dealing with drug gangs in the city. It's going to be a tough record to follow.
Congressman Steve Scalise also reacted to today's news. He expressed sadness at the news and thanked Letton for his years of honest, hard work and service to our state. He went on to say Letton leaves behind the legacy of a courageous leader who changed the corrupt Louisiana way and revitalized the public's faith in our political
and justice systems.
Federal prosecutors amassed an impressive track record going after corruption in the region under Jim Letton's watch. Yesterday, businessman Rodney Williams pleaded guilty to taking bribes from an unnamed public official identified by a source as former Mayor Ray Nagin. As part of what appears to be the same investigation, businessman Frank Pradella also entered a guilty plea to making a $50,000 payoff to a city official. And that is just currently what's going on. The office successfully prosecuted NOPD officers in the Danziger Bridge shooting case and the death of Henry Glover, whose body was found in a burned out car after Katrina. Letton's office convicted 2 city council members of corruption, John Johnson, and a few years back, Oliver Thomas, who some people thought would have been mayor. Elsewhere in the region, former Jefferson Parish President Aaron Broussard pleaded guilty in a case that included bribes, wire fraud, and giving his wife a parish job she was not qualified to hold. Plaquemines Parish Sheriff Jiff Hingle and businessman Aaron Bennett convicted of bribes received and given in return for government contracts. Letton's office also went after one of the most politically well-known and powerful families in New Orleans with the prosecution of Mose and Betty Jefferson, along with Renee Gill Pratt. Jim Letton leaves his office at a time when several high-profile investigations are being conducted.
Letton didn't specifically comment on those cases, but vowed that the men and women of the U.S. Attorney's Office would not give up the fight for justice. Natasha Robin has a story.
All of our citizens can be truly proud, and prouder every single day, because of the ground we've covered, because of the victories we've forged, because of the culture we together have changed.
His crusade against crime has resulted in many convictions. But Jim Letton steps down at a time when his office ramps up its investigation of former New Orleans Mayor Ray Nagin's administration.
Jim Letton's resignation will go into effect next Tuesday. Nancy?
Former U.S. Attorney Jim Letton says he's considering a wide range of job options.
Tonight we get Chris Rose's take on Letton's resignation.
And so the story ends with Jim Letton riding off into the sunset. Cue the moseying soundtrack, the jangle of spurs. Slung over Cowboy Jim's saddle are the hides of the vanquished, a legion of bad guys who menaced and terrorized the townsfolk until he slew them. Yet what an odd silhouette his shadow casts. He sits tall in the saddle, still wears the white hat, and as the entertainer's credo goes, always leave the audience wanting more. By that measure, Jim Letton exits the stage of success. We want more of what he did, most assuredly. Yet he is in the end humbled, humiliated even, in an oh-so-21st century dust-up. Letton went down not gloriously amid a barrage of bullets, but more ironically in a snarky barrage of chat room gossip and puffery. The towering self-regard of his top 2 aides-de-camp proved his eventual undoing. In the same manner that Letton will remain a symbol of justice, honor, and, in the end, sacrifice, Jan Mann and Sal Perricone will forever represent the folly of hubris, the corrosion of cynicism, and the false promise of internet anonymity. Finally, what matinee is complete without a foil, a town jester? Enter Edwin Edwards, so sadly writing himself into the final script. Congenitally unable to resist a microphone or camera placed before him, the Cajun King could not pass on an opportunity to skewer a former nemesis, nor to refrain from his trademark delivery of the well-practiced spontaneous quip, the clever retort, the erudite bon mot, which in this case was, sit by the river long enough. I did. In the stage business, this is known as a callback, and it refers to Edwards' comments after his conviction at the hands of prosecutor Letton in 2000. That time he said, the Chinese have a saying that if you sit by the river long enough, the dead body of your enemy will come floating down. Now, I'm not sure Jim Letton fits the role of the dead body here. Defeated, yes, but I think the real casualty here seems obvious. The public trust takes the fall as the credits roll. Now, somebody, please turn off this movie. What a dud.
Chris Rose.